Questions to the Prime Minister. Mr. Paul Maynard.
Number one, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm sure the whole House will wish to join me in paying tribute to the two servicemen who were killed in Afghanistan on Saturday. Corporal Brent McCarthy from the Royal Air Force and Lance Corporal Lee Davis from 1st Battalion Welsh Guards. Our deepest condolences are with their families and their loved ones. They were both courageous and highly respected men who were engaged in the vitally important work of training and mentoring the Afghan police. Their service to our nation must never be forgotten. This morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others, and in addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Mr. Paul Maynard.
May I associate myself with the Prime Minister's correct tribute to our fallen servicemen? It is the right thing to do. Can I also welcome the fall in unemployment that we have seen today, and perhaps more importantly, the rise in employment? Can the Prime Minister assure me that he will continue to invest in the apprenticeships, the work programmes and the other schemes that get my constituents and all our constituents back to work?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for what he says about the schemes that we are putting forward. It is welcome that we've had the largest rise in employment for over a year. The number of people in work since the last election is up by 370,000, and private sector jobs are now up by over 600,000. We're not remotely complacent about this, because although there is good news about youth unemployment and the claimant count coming down, there's still too many people in part-time work who want full-time work, and also we still have the challenge of tackling long-term unemployment. We're not complacent. Whereas the flexible New Deal took 4 years to put in place, the work programme has been put in place within 12 months and is targeted at helping the difficult to help and the long-term unemployed, who we want to help back to work.
Mr. Miliband.
Mr. Speaker, can I join the Prime Minister in paying tribute to Corporal Brent McCarthy from the Royal Air Force, Lance Corporal Lee Davis from 1st Battalion, the Welsh Guards. They both showed the utmost bravery and courage, and our thoughts are with their family and friends. Mr. Speaker, we do need to make sure that the welcome reduction in unemployment today is sustained by economic growth. Can the Prime Minister tell us what discussions he's had about a growth plan for Europe with the new President of France?
Well, first of all, let me welcome the fact that on this occasion he has welcomed the fall in unemployment. As I said, it's not just that unemployment has come down, the claimant count has come down, and I think it is worth making the point that the number of people on out-of-work benefits has actually fallen by 70,000 since the election. But there are still challenges. We must go on investing in apprenticeships and in the work programme. I had a brief discussion with the President of France after his victory. I look forward to having a longer bilateral with him before the G8 starts this weekend. I look forward specifically to discussing what more we can do to help in terms of European growth. As the right honourable gentleman will know, together with the Italian Prime Minister and many other Prime Ministers, we have put forward a whole series of steps that can help the European economy to move. Let's complete the energy single market. Let's complete the digital single market. Let's complete the services single market. These things could seriously add to growth in Europe. That is what we should be focused on in Europe, and I look forward to discussing that and more with the French President.
Mr. Speaker, if I may say so, it's a shame he didn't see the French President 3 months ago when he was in the United Kingdom. But I'm sure, Mr. Speaker, a text message and LOL will go down very well. Mr. Speaker, Europe needs a proper growth plan, which this Prime Minister has failed to argue for. And Britain needs a proper growth plan, which he has failed to come up with. Now, business is pleading with the government for a growth plan. Does he really agree with the Foreign Secretary that the problems of our economy is that British business is not working hard enough?
Well, first of all, I have to admit that perhaps I've been overusing my mobile phone, but at least as Prime Minister I know how to use a mobile phone rather than just throw it at the people who work for me. So probably still see the dents. I do think there will be common ground between the British view of what needs to happen in Europe and the French view. I note that the French president, when asked how he would stimulate growth, the French president said the means cannot be extra public spending since we want to rein it in. So it is interesting that the French president does not back the Labour view that the way out of a debt crisis is to borrow more, spend more, and add to your debts. But I do think what we need to have in Britain, absolutely vital, is the low interest rates that we have, because when this government came to power, we had the same interest rates as Spain. Today, ours are below 2%, where Spanish rates are over 6%. And to the Shadow Chancellor, who was saying from a sedentary position that somehow this was delusional, let me remind him what he said. He said the simplest measure of monetary and fiscal policy credibility is long-term low interest rates. Those were his words. That is what Britain has got, and that is what we mustn't lose.
Mr. Speaker, he totally failed to answer the question about the Foreign Secretary, who's saying that the problem in our economy is that British business is not somehow working hard enough. And I do notice he's now trying to claim the President of France as an ally. I mean, what is he on? But Mr. Speaker, there is one group of people who we know are losing their jobs, and that's the police, 30,000 of whom marched on the streets last week. Can the Prime Minister tell us how many frontline police officers have been lost since he came to power?
Well, I'm not surprised he wants to rush off the economy after his first few questions. Let me just remind him what this government is doing to boost our economy. We've cut corporation tax. We've boosted enterprise zones. We're investing in apprenticeships. We're investing in housing. We're making sure we put that money into infrastructure. But above all, because we have a plan to deal with our deficit, we have the lowest interest rates, whereas he would give us the highest interest rates. Now, turning to policing, Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary have actually found that the police forces are planning to increase the proportion of police officers and staff that are working on the front line. So they are taking people out of the back office and putting them on the front line. But let me say this to the honourable gentleman. Let me say this. Both parties are committed to making cuts in police budget. He is committed to £1 billion of cuts. But the point is this. We are reforming allowances, we are cutting paperwork, we are freezing pay, we're reforming pensions. He wouldn't do any of those things, so his cuts would be deeper, because he doesn't have the courage to do the right thing.
Speaker, first of all, on the economy, we're in double-dip recession, a recession made in Downing Street, made by the two of them. And that's the reality. And that's the reality. On policing, everybody will have noticed his answer. The proportion of frontline officers. That's because he's sacking so many police officers from the back office. But what's actually happening to the number of frontline police officers? 5,000 fewer frontline officers. Fewer 999 responders, fewer neighbourhood police, fewer traffic police. And what was his sales pitch? Mr. Speaker, they were elected on the promise of more police officers. No wonder they're losing the elections. Now, what was his sales pitch just before the election? This is what he said. They don't want to hear about what he said before the election. Any cabinet minister who comes to me and says, here are my plans, and they involve frontline reductions, will be sent straight back to their departments to go away and think again. Is it any wonder the police are absolutely furious with his broken promise?
Oh dear, he's having a bad day. Look, let me try and explain. Whoever was standing here right now would have to cut police budgets. They accept that, we accept that. But if you don't have the courage to deal with allowances, to deal with paperwork, to deal with pay, you'd have to make deeper cuts. And this is what I'm extremely calm. This is what his own police spokesman said. He was asked the question, aren't you accepting the need for a freeze on police pay? That is what Yvette Cooper has said recently. No. So that's it. No, they don't accept the freeze on pay. They don't accept the pension reform. They wouldn't do the paperwork cuts. They would be cutting the police more deeply. That is their position. Absolutely no policy ideas at all.
Mr. Speaker, I know he's going to have extensive training before he goes before Leveson. I think it should. I've got a suggestion. Mr. Speaker. I think it should include anger management. I think it would be very good for him. Now, it's not just in policing where he has broken his promises. We all remember his promises 3 years ago to the nurses. He told the conference there will be no top-down reorganisation. He didn't go back to the Royal College of Nursing conference this year, Mr. Speaker, I noticed. Can the Prime Minister tell us how many fewer nurses there are since he came to power?
The number of clinical staff in the NHS has gone up. And the reason it's gone up is because this government has put more money into the NHS every year. And what is his commitment? His commitment is that spending on the NHS is irresponsible. That is his commitment, to cut spending on the NHS. What is actually happening in the NHS is the lowest number of people waiting for 18 weeks in our NHS. And that is because we've got more doctors, more clinical staff, and fewer people who are bureaucrats working in the NHS.
Miliband.
I'm afraid back to the bunker with that answer, Mr. Speaker. There are 3,500 fewer nurses since he became Prime Minister. And they couldn't even get the figure right, the health ministers on the radio. They couldn't even tell us how many nurses. Nurses in training who can't find jobs. And all because he's diverted billions of pounds from patient care to a top-down reorganisation that nobody voted for and nobody wanted. And I know he doesn't like being reminded of his words, but that's because he broke his promise. And, Mr. Speaker, that's the problem with this government. They cut taxes for millionaires and cut services for the rest of it. Oh, I know they don't like hearing about it, Mr. Speaker. I know they don't like hearing about it. What did the Honourable Member for Cleethorpes say? We can't convince voters we are on their side when we give top earners a tax cut, leaving Mr. and Mrs. Average reeling. That is the truth of this government. They are unfair, out of touch, and they stand up for the wrong people.
What this government has done is delivered a tax cut for every single working person in the country. We've froze the council tax for every household in the country. We've taken 2 million people out of tax in our country. But what's the big decision? What is the big decision that the Leader of the Opposition has taken this week? He took the person in charge of his policy review, the Honourable Member for Hodge Hill, the person who said they had to be serious about the deficit, who said they had to be serious about welfare reform, the person who told us they'd run out of money, and they've replaced him with a policy chief who thinks Labour's problem is they're not close enough to the trade unions. That is his big decision. I often wonder whether his problem is whether he's weak or left-wing. His problem is he's both.
Order, perhaps we can now make some progress with short questions and short answers. Sir Peter Tapsell.
Does my right honourable friend suppose that Chancellor Merkel now regrets that she did not take the advice which he gave her last October about the big bazooka, which, if she had fired it then, would have spared the European Union from its present crisis?
I can't quite... I can't give a direct answer to that. What I would say to the honourable gentleman is the Eurozone has to make a choice. If the Eurozone wants to continue as it is, then it has got to build a proper firewall. It's got to take steps to secure the weakest members of the Eurozone, or it's going to have to work out it has to go in a different direction. It either has to make up or it is looking at a potential breakup. That is the choice they have to make, and it's a choice they cannot long put off.
Meg Hillier.
Mr. Speaker, If Andy Coulson was not vetted, why did he attend secret briefings and what documents did he see? Isn't this a mess?
I know the Honourable Lady is desperate to find the sort of smoking gun, but I absolutely tell her this is absolutely not it. We took a view on coming to office that in the past there were two...
Order. Order. The question has been put and the answer must be heard. The Prime Minister.
We took a view there had been too many people who'd actually been cleared at the highest level, and that had led to some of the problems in terms of Alistair Campbell. But actually, when it came to it, Andy Coulson was in the process of being development vetted. So there's absolutely no mystery about this at all, and I'd ask her, I'd go and look somewhere else.
Joseph Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Britain has just posted its first quarterly trade surplus in cars since the 1975 nationalisation of British Leyland by one of the last Labour governments before last. Will the Prime Minister welcome the news that Britain has not only cut its deficit by 25% over the last 2 years, but is once again a net car exporter?
My honourable friend makes an extremely good point, and the party opposite do not want to hear good news. He's absolutely right that while we've had to take difficult decisions, the deficit has now been reduced by 1/4, so we are on our way to balancing our budget and dealing with our problems. But on the issue of motor car manufacture, it is encouraging. The first time since 1976 that we have a surplus in car manufacturing. That is because of the hard work people have put in at Nissan, at Honda, at Jaguar Land Rover. It is extremely good news that it has taken this long to get back to a trade surplus in cars, and that Britain is once again a real home for manufacturing.
Hugh Bailey.
Mr. Speaker, two years ago during the general election, the York Press reported the Prime Minister promising, I quote, "We won't bring in VAT increase." Has the Prime Minister considered that if he were to honour that pledge and reverse the VAT increase, he'd put money in people's pockets, stimulate the economy, and get Britain out of a double-dip recession made in Downing Street?
The reason we had to put up VAT is we were left the biggest budget deficit anywhere in Europe. It was bigger than Greece, bigger than Spain, bigger than Portugal, the complete mess left by the party opposite, and we now know from reading the former Chancellor's memoirs that he was going to put up VAT too.
Caroline Dinage.
Mr. Speaker, you may be aware that this is Adult Learning Week, and Gosport's inspirational Read and Grow charity has just received lottery funds to support the innovative work that they're doing with adult literacy. Can I simply invite the Prime Minister and the education team to visit Gosport and see for themselves how this work could be rolled out around the rest of the country to benefit people?
I think the Honourable Lady is absolutely right to raise this issue. It is a tragedy that there are too many adults in our country who don't have proper literacy and reading skills because of not being taught properly at school. It's vital that we put that right through initiatives like the one that she recommends in terms of Adult Learner Week. But we've got to do better in our schools in the first place to make sure that no child is left behind. We now know you can teach reading so that no child gets left behind through the phonics scheme that my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State, is leading on. And we must make sure this is available for every child in every school.
Mr. Nigel Dodds.
The police service in Northern Ireland, Mr. Speaker, has revealed that between 1960 and 2005 it kept body parts and tissue samples in 64 cases of suspicious deaths without notifying the families and loved ones of those concerned, many of them in my constituency, and other police forces in England have done the same. The Prime Minister and the whole House will sympathise with the families concerned and obviously the shock that has been felt throughout Northern Ireland today as the families are being visited. Will the Prime Minister join with me in demanding the fullest and speediest answers as to what happened in these cases so that the families can know as quickly as possible? And does he have sympathy with the idea of an independent review to explain exactly how this practice went on for so long right across the United Kingdom?
Well, I thank the honourable gentleman for his question. I'm sure I speak for everyone in the House expressing sympathy for the families who found out this terrible news about their loved ones. It must be a time of huge anguish for them. I'm extremely sorry that this report has been leaked, because it was going to be announced properly on Monday, where there can be a proper statement and a proper explanation about what has gone on. I'm sure my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, will listen carefully to what he says about the form of inquiry that needs to be held. But let's first of all publish the information on Monday so that everyone can see what went wrong and why this happened.
Stuart Andrew.
Growing up in a council house, I remember well how proud people in my community were to be the first in their family to own their own home. Will my right honourable friend do all he can to give that same opportunity to a new generation of families?
I think my honourable friend makes a really important point. I think the right to buy your council house was a hugely important social and economic change that gave people a stake in their society, a stake in their community, and also led to a huge improvement in many housing estates up and down the country. I think it's very sad that under the last government, the discounts were allowed to go away. He asked what we're going to do. We are going to increase the discount right away to £75,000, which in some cases will mean a quadrupling of the available discount. Years of Labour neglect, 2 years for a coalition government, and we can get council house tenants buying their homes again.
Mr. Ian Austin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in recent weeks, Britain's gone back into recession. We've had a botched budget. We've had crazy advice from the Cabinet Office to stockpile petrol at home. Can I ask the Prime Minister, which of these does he think has caused the calamitous collapse in his reputation for competence?
I think what he should be recognising is today unemployment has fallen, the claimant count has come down, more people are in work. Yes, we have a difficult economic situation, but he listens to the Governor of the Bank of England this morning. He will have heard that he is saying we are coming up with a textbook response to what needs to be done to clear up the mess made by people like him.
Pauline Latham.
Mr. Speaker, businesses and homeowners in my constituency of mid-Derbyshire are having a tough time at the moment. It would be worse if it wasn't for consistently low interest rates. Under Labour, long-term interest rates were the same as Spain. This week our rates are at a record low of under 2%, while Spain's are at 6%. Will the Prime Minister assure the people of mid-Derbyshire he'll do nothing to put this situation into jeopardy?
Look, my honourable friend makes a very important point, which is that for every increase in interest rates of 1%, it will add £1,000 to the typical family mortgage. The fact is today, British interest rates are below 2% because the world has confidence that in spite of our economic difficulties, we have a plan to deal with our debt and deal with our deficit. You can see from looking around Europe what happens if you don't have a plan. Your interest rates go up. That is bad for business, bad for homeowners, bad for the economy. And that's what we'd get if we listened to the party opposite.
Tony Lloyd.
Mr. Speaker, many agencies let down those children involved in the Rochdale sex abuse cases. But what the whole House must agree that offering looked after children a safe and secure place to live must be paramount. In that context, given that there are wide-scale concerns about the private children's homes that operate in this area, will the Prime Minister do two things? Will he look at having an inquiry into whether they are properly funded and have properly trained staff? Would he also make sure that monitoring now begins to work effectively, because it clearly has not done so far?
No, well, I'm glad the honourable gentleman raises this issue. It's a truly shocking case. We need to look very carefully at what went wrong. I've asked my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State for Education, to do this. He, in turn, has asked the Children's Commissioner to do a piece of work on it. I think we need to look at why information wasn't passed more rapidly from children's homes to police, why action wasn't taken more rapidly. I think there are obviously issues about inspection, which he discusses, but there are also issues about why action wasn't taken. And I think it's very important we get to the bottom of a truly, truly dreadful case.
Mr. Jason McCartney.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Huddersfield Town fans are celebrating today, having won a place in the League One player final at Wembley. But also winning in my constituency are local manufacturing businesses who are winning new orders, creating new jobs and creating apprenticeships. Would the Prime Minister agree with me that the record number of apprenticeships in the UK is a clear sign that this government is committed to getting Britain working?
Well, I'm grateful to my honourable friend, and through him, if I could wish Huddersfield Town all the best, although that might be a prime ministerial curse. On apprenticeships, we achieved 457,000 apprenticeship starts last year. We're hoping to achieve another over 400,000 this year. The budget has been increased to over £1.5 billion. This should deliver 250,000 more apprenticeships across this Parliament than were planned by the party opposite. There's a lot more to do also to make sure these are really high quality apprenticeships, and we're also targeting on the young people who need help most.
Simon Danchuk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My honourable friend, the member for Manchester Central, made reference to the case and situation in Rochdale. I want to speak about the girls in that case, the vulnerable girls that went to hell and back in terms of what they experienced. I pay tribute to their bravery in coming forward and standing up to their abusers. They did it to get justice and to stop it happening to others. Vulnerable girls like this don't usually get heard by politicians. They don't get easy access to power or influence. How will the government respond to these terrible crimes, and will the Prime Minister support a serious case review?
Well, first of all, can I pay tribute to the honourable gentleman, because he's absolutely right to say that these girls have been brave to come forward and to tell their stories and all the difficulties that involves, but also to be right. He himself has talked about people who've come to his constituency surgeries. The problem, of course, this is a problem across communities, but there are particular problems in particular communities, and he's been brave to say that, because we need to face up to these problems if we're going to deal with them. In terms of what he asked in terms of a review, I will have a look at that. As I said, the Office of the Children's Commissioner are going to hopefully come up with recommendations within a month, and I understand that Rochdale Borough Safeguarding Children Board has conducted a review of child sex exploitation that will be published, but the issue of a serious case review, I'm prepared to look at that as well.
George Eustace.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Next year, Camborne Science and International Academy will become the first ever British school to host the International Student Science Fair, welcoming schools from around the world. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that if Britain is to prosper in the future, we need to lead the world in science and technology, and that we should support the efforts of schools like Camborne, which are leading the way?
No, I think he's absolutely right to highlight this issue and to highlight the school in his constituency that's clearly doing a good job. If we want to compete in a very competitive global market, we need more science teaching, we need more science graduates, and we need also to encourage those science graduates back into the classroom to train up the next generation of scientists and engineers. The good news is there has been an 80% increase in the number of students taking science GCSEs since 2010. And my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State for Education, has put in place some generous bursary schemes to encourage some of our top maths and science graduates back into the classroom to make sure they're teaching the next generation.
Dan Jarvis.
Mr. Speaker, it's now clear that the government does not have a comprehensive long-term strategy for care. So does the Prime Minister agree that the sharp increase in home care charges released in figures today is the result of his cut of £1 billion from local council budgets for older people?
I'm afraid I don't think the honourable gentleman's figures are right. We actually, in the spending review, we put £2 billion extra into adult social care. But we have inherited a situation where there isn't a clear strategy or pathway for social care. We need to deliver one. That is why there's going to be a white paper coming forward this year, which has got to look at all of... He says when? They had 13 years where they just ducked decision after decision. Royal commissions were held, absolutely nothing was done. Within 2 years, we've done far more than they did in 13.
Tessa Munt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Some 2,000 highly paid public servants have been exposed for avoiding paying their fair share of tax. Would the Prime Minister agree that whenever someone is paid a salary using taxpayers' money, the government should insist that they're on the payroll, they pay full PAYE income tax and national insurance contributions?
I think the honourable lady is right to raise this, and I agree with what she says. We have been shocked by the level of this problem. The Treasury is looking at it closely, but the principle she announces that if you're paid by the public, you should be paid and taxed properly is absolutely spot on.
Mr. Peter Hain.
Would the Prime Minister meet to take forward the Severn Barrage project, entirely privately financed, the biggest source of renewable generation in Europe, generating 5% of Britain's electricity needs, And does he accept, with a flat economy in Britain and in Europe, this 30 billion private investment in growth and jobs is a no-brainer?
No, and I heard the honourable gentleman on farming today waxing eloquent on this project. I think it does have many advantages. There's a huge amount of renewable energy can be delivered through a barrage of this kind. He knows there are lots of problems and the environmental groups have been divided over it, but I'm very happy to listen to his views as he takes forward this important piece of work. And I think there are many opportunities, as he says, in a challenging European economy to look at energy connectors and energy cooperation, particularly between England, France and other northern European countries.
Mr. Christopher Pincher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Both the National Audit Office and the Public Accounts Committee have praised the work programme for getting off the ground in under a year, in stark contrast to the 4 wasted years it took for Labour's programme to get off the ground. What further help can the Prime Minister give to my striving job seekers in Tamworth, where unemployment figures monthly are falling, to find the work they want?
I think the honourable gentleman makes an important point, because not only has the work programme got up and running quickly, it has actually helped already, or is helping 519,000 people. It will help over 3 million people in total. The key difference between it and previous programmes is payment by results. So we are paying providers more money for the more difficult people who've been out of work for a long time, who've got serious challenges about getting back into the workplace. So I think we can use this programme not just to help people who've fallen out of work recently, but people who totally lost connection with the labour market. Those are the people we want to help most, and it's a very, very innovative programme way of doing it.
Sir Alan Johnson.
In April last year, the government announced the successful bids in round 1 of the Regional Growth Fund. Hull was very pleased to be included. It means 500 jobs. It means rescuing people from some of the poorest housing conditions in the country. 13 months later, not a penny of that Regional Growth Fund money has materialised. Will the Prime Minister tell me why? And if he can't, will he undertake to find out and ensure that this money flows before the summer recess?
I will certainly look at the case the right honourable gentleman raises. With the Regional Growth Fund as a whole, around half of the projects are now underway. Serious amounts of money is being disbursed. In terms of a comparison with the regional development agencies, the overhead costs are like 3 million compared with 240 million, so we're able to put a lot more money into these projects, but I'll certainly look at his specific project and write to him shortly.
Order, we come.